Hello everyone! Today we're going to be talking about unlocking entrepreneurship. And before we start, I'd like to introduce myself a bit. My name is Krista Rensel. I'm the founder and user experience designer behind Nimble Kettle, where I work with startups and creative teams to build friendlier web and mobile apps. I also work with many organizations to bring clarity to their projects and processes. Doing this type of freelance work has allowed me to work beside some really cool companies, and I've gotten to see how their projects go from an idea to a product to a sustainable and thriving business, which is what I'm here to share with you today. So before we can jump into unlocking entrepreneurship within your company, we first have to understand the difference between entrepreneurship, intrapreneurship, and what all of that even means. An entrepreneur is someone that solves a problem through a sustainable business solution. Whereas an intrapreneur is an employee who is given the freedom and support to create new products, systems, and services within the company they already work for. Now, you may have heard the term intrapreneurship going by the names corporate entrepreneurship, corporate venturing, internal entrepreneurship, or employee entrepreneurship. Now, all of these terms mean essentially the same thing and follow the same processes. A few of the major differences between entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship include ownership, funding, profits, and responsibility. As an entrepreneur, these four things fall solely on your shoulders to take care of. Whereas an intrapreneur, while you might be responsible for pieces of all of these things, at the end of the day, the full weight of the responsibility lands on the shoulders of the company you work for. Now, why does entrepreneurship matter? Why should any of us care? Well, according to a study done by Deloitte, as many as 28% of millennials believe their talents aren't being tapped into at their current jobs. And another 2014 study found that 66% of millennials would like to start their own businesses. Now, these numbers may not represent your workforce as a whole, but they do give us some insight into the mindset of many employees. And we can see that employees that don't feel valued, that aren't challenged, start to feel restless, which can lead to an unhappy workplace, a large turnover rate, and employees that are just looking for an opportunity to jump ship. On the flip side, entrepreneurship can help foster innovation, breed talent by allowing employees to play to their strengths, which may be outside of their day-to-day responsibilities, can save your company money on outside R&D while gaining competitive intelligence. You can diversify your business offerings, increase your employee happiness, and streamline your processes and procedures. So what does entrepreneurship look like in action? How does it actually work in the real world? A great example of this is a company called Code School. Now, before Code School was even a thought, a web development company called Envy Labs became well known within the Ruby on Rails community. For those of us who aren't developers, Ruby on Rails is a programming framework. One thing that Envy did really well and really early on was create educational videos to increase their brand exposure. Because of this, they were invited to host many workshops at different industry conferences. One thing they found when hosting these workshops is that they spent more time helping people get their computers set up than they did actually teaching them new ideas. So they decided to use their programming knowledge to create an interactive course, letting them get to the teaching part of these workshops faster. This one course then led to building what is now codeschool.com. Code School eventually grew to the point where they had to break away from Envy Labs and was recently acquired by a company called Pluralsight. And the big takeaway here is that they looked at this hiccup as an opportunity rather than a failure, and they saw the potential in continuing to foster that idea. So let's take a step back and look at things from a high-level perspective. What does the cycle of innovation look like? Well, the first step is to identify your problem. Is it an internal problem? Is it a common issue among your customers? Is it an industry-wide issue that you think you can solve? What does that look like? The next step is collecting information. I have a friend that likes to say some entrepreneurs solve annoyances, the good ones solve problems. So you need to look, is the problem you're trying to solve an annoyance or a real issue? Who does it affect? How much does it affect them? And are they willing to pay for a solution? The next step is actually developing your solution. Now, this could be as simple as a spreadsheet or checklist, or as complicated as a mobile app or full-blown platform. But what does that solution look like, and how can you create something that you can get out to customers immediately so that you can start to get customer validation and feedback? Now remember, these customers could be your employees, they could be users, they could be guests. But what do they have to say about the solution you created? Is it helpful? Do they like it? The last step is to improve your solution by continuously looking for ways to improve upon what you're working on. So how do you begin to establish a culture that supports entrepreneurship and innovation? Well, the first thing to know is that entrepreneurs are found, not made. Entrepreneurs are inherently creative. They're they're idea people. They're not afraid to take risks or color outside the lines. And this isn't something you can force people into, but it is something that you can find, nurture, and support. You also need to create room for exploration and failure without consequence by giving your team the trust and encouragement that they need. Now, this all goes back to creating a company culture that supports innovation. You can build into your daily interactions that trust and appreciation that will help pull this out of people. Now, I'm sure we're all familiar with the company 3M. I mean, they're probably best known for their line of tapes and adhesives. But it wasn't always that way. Back in 1925, a sandpaper salesman named Dick Drew worked for the company. He spent most of his days at auto body shops, showing mechanics how well the product worked. Back in the day, when cars were being painted, they would use butcher paper and a really strong adhesive to block off different parts of the car as they were painting. But that strong adhesive would also pull the paint off when they were done, so lots of extra detailing work was required afterwards. Dick saw this, and he realized that sandpaper is just adhesive and sand mixed together. Leave out the sand, and the adhesive might just be the solution that those manufacturers need. Well, he headed back to the workshop, and several failed glue attempts later, Dick had a breakthrough and created what is now known as masking tape. Now, while his boss at the time was very wary of Dick spending so much time working on adhesives rather than selling sandpaper, he quickly realized the potential of the product. Now let's jump forward to today. 3M has structured their entire company around the idea of innovation and entrepreneurship. And adhesives are the thing that they're known best for. Alright, so this is all well and good in the theoretical, right? But how do you actually start establishing that culture of entrepreneurship within your own business? Here are some ideas on getting started. The first, and probably the easiest, is to start hosting a monthly day of betterment. This is a day when everyone in the company sets aside their daily tasks and instead works on something that betters them as employees or betters the company as a whole. So take a look at maybe streamlining your processes, coming up with a tool that makes your daily tasks easier, do something that makes your customer's day extra special. Again, this can be something as simple as a spreadsheet or even just reorganizing your office. Take a look at what you're already doing. Is there a way you can turn that into a profitable product? For example, let's say you're a manufacturer and you have a jig that you use to create every single product. Well, it may just seem like some little tool that you use. That tool might be valuable to other manufacturers and could create an entire new revenue stream for your company. It's worth looking into. Use slow seasons as an opportunity for innovation. Take a look at what your coworkers are doing. If someone's developed a system or something that makes their job easier, give them time to develop that idea It might be something that you want to implement throughout your whole team or even your whole company. Don't be afraid to bring in an outside consultant or someone that has worked on a project within their own business. And finally, don't give up on an idea just because it may not be your specialty. Don't be afraid to bring in a topical expert if it's needed. The most important thing is to just start. Start exploring. Even if some ideas flop, and they absolutely will, though the ones that won't, the ones that succeed, can bring real value and return to your business, and it makes the entrepreneurial journey so worth it.